Between our three Democratic candidates, all state senators seeking the party's nomination for the office of Secretary of State. That's Kate Brown, Rick Metzger, and Vicki Walker. And then 2 weeks from today, we'll be hosting a special 90-minute candidates forum between 6 candidates vying for the other open city club, for another open city council seat, and we'll begin a little earlier. So if you have questions, please submit them to City Club. My second announcement is that City Club has launched a Work for Your Lunch membership campaign. This is our annual spring campaign, the time of year when our members can make good on all their good intentions to invite a civic-minded friend, colleague, or neighbor to a Friday forum or to an open house. Our goal this year is to have 100 new members between now and May 31st, and we need your help to reach that goal. So we're offering you an incentive. So yes, there is such thing as a free lunch. You recruit a new member, and you and the new member will each get a free lunch here at the Friday Forum. And if you aren't a member yet but would like to join today, we hope that you will. Please see the staff in the back of the room at the close of the forum. And finally, speaking of new members, we have 4 new members today that I'd like to introduce. And when I read your name, would you please stand? After everybody stood, we'd like to applaud and welcome you. First is William Becker. William is a community organizer. Could you stand, William? Joe Esmond, who is in politics and renewable energy with the IBEW Local 48. Mycroft Evans, who's a business analyst. He has recently returned to Portland from Australia. And Reba Aiken, who's a naturopath. Please join me in welcoming these new members. And truly finally, today is the final Friday of the month, and that means we'll be having Final Friday at the City Club Commons from 4:30 to 6. The thing that I like best about Friday, the Final Friday reception, is that it's always a great opportunity to have a conversation with someone that I did not know before, and they're always interesting and memorable. And I hope you'll come meet other City Club members, other potential new members, and meet Portland artist Julia Gardner, whose art will be on display at City Club Commons. We are so fortunate to have in Portland great corporate citizens that help make these forums possible. Our sponsors today are KeyBank, Zimmer Gunsel Frasca Architects, and the law firm of Schwabe Williamson and Wyatt. Would you please join me in thanking our sponsors? I'd now like to introduce Annette Price, who will introduce the candidates. Annette Price is the State Affairs Manager for the Port of Portland. Annette came to the Port in 2006, and she is responsible for representing the Port on issues before the Oregon Legislature and Executive Branch, including the state agencies. Before joining the Port, Annette served as Chief of Staff to 4 presidents of the Oregon Senate, earning respect from both sides of the aisle for her even-handed management and the legislative process. She's been described to me as the lobbyist who gets along with everyone. Would you please join me in welcoming Annette Price?
Thank you, and good afternoon. Welcome to the debate today between Jim Middaugh and Nick Fish. Let me explain a little bit about the debate. It will have several sections. First, each candidate will give a 3-minute opening statement. A coin toss determines the order of the appearance in this debate. Our timekeeper today is John Horvick. Following the opening statements, candidates will respond to questions suggested in advance of this meeting by City Club members and the general public. A subcommittee of the City Club's Friday Forum Committee selected and edited the final set of questions. These are the only questions that will be asked today. There will be no questions from the floor. We will rely on the judgment of our distinguished panel of City Club members seated at the table here below to decide whether or not the questions have indeed been answered. If two or more of these members raise their cards indicating that they feel a question has not been answered, I will restate the question and ask the candidate to reply again. Our panel today, we have Tom Cox, Gene Crouch, and Ted Kay. Following the City Club's questions, each candidate will have the opportunity to ask 3 questions of the other. Following the rotation of the candidate questions, each candidate will make a 3-minute closing statement. Please be respectful of the candidates, and please hold all applause until the end of the program, or you'll hear from me. So let me introduce the candidates. First, Nick Fish. Nick Fish earned an undergraduate degree from Harvard in 1981. Shortly after graduation, he went to work as a legislative aide for Massachusetts Congressman Barney Frank. After receiving a law degree at Northeastern University, Mr. Fish went to work representing healthcare workers and unions in New York. He was appointed to Manhattan's Community Board of 5, serving as chair for 2 years. As a neighborhood leader, Mr. Fish worked to transform the Times Square Hotel into affordable housing for theater district workers, residents with AIDS, and formerly homeless individuals. Mr. Fish moved to Portland in 1996 with his family and has since been working as a labor and employment attorney. He is now a partner at the Meyer Wyse law firm, and for the past 3 years, Mr. Fish has hosted Outlook Portland with Nick Fish, a public affairs program on KRCW Channel 3. He has served as a commissioner and vice chair of the Housing Authority in Portland and is on the boards of the Oregon Cultural Trust and Volunteers of America, Oregon, as well as the advisory board for the Sidney Lezak Project, which encourages young people to become engaged in social justice movements. Mr. Fish also serves as a citizen representative on the Multnomah County Task Force on Vital Aging. Mr. Middaugh, Jim Middaugh, has moved to Oregon in 1980 to attend the University of Oregon, where he earned a bachelor's degree in journalism. During the 1980s, Mr. Middaugh worked for Congressman Peter DeFazio in Washington, D.C. And when Mr. Middaugh moved back to Oregon in 1992, he worked for the Oregon Natural Resource Council, now known as Oregon Wild. After the ONRC, he worked on light rail issues for TriMet and on a range of public policy issues for a number of public interest groups in both Oregon and Washington, D.C. Mr. Middaugh then moved to the Northwest Power Planning Council as a public affairs manager. Most recently, Mr. Middaugh served as Portland City Commissioner Erik Sten's chief of staff, where he helped lead the Schools, Family, and Housing Initiative, as well as the director of the City of Portland's Science, Fish, and Wildlife Division, where he worked directly with all the major bureaus to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of river restoration projects. In his spare time, Mr. Middaugh serves as Multnomah County's appointee to the Columbia River Gorge Commission, where he works to protect the scenic and natural resources of the natural scenic area. He is also a former co-chair of his neighborhood association and volunteers at his kids' school. Will the candidates come please take their podiums? Mr. Fish, please begin with your opening statements of 3 minutes.
Thank you, City Club, for inviting us here today to join with you. 12 years ago, my family moved to Portland. We bought a house in Grant Park, and my wife, Patty, started a new career teaching history at Portland State University. 4 years ago, we welcomed a new addition to our family, Chapin Fish, a native Oregonian. As further proof that Portland is a small town, Commissioner Erik Sten, whom I seek to replace, and I both experienced the joys of fatherhood on the same day, in the same hospital, on the same ward. He even named his son Nicholas. Today, our daughter Maria is a 9th grader in Portland Public Schools, fluent in Spanish and thriving in the classroom and on the soccer field. For me, Portland has been a place of new beginnings and new opportunities. As a civil rights lawyer, I have helped people without power achieve justice. As a community leader, I have embraced Portland's proud tradition of civic engagement, working with others to improve our city. I led a community coalition to save the Portland Women's Crisis Line. I raised tens of thousands of dollars for scholarships at PSU to help students pursue careers in public service. I delivered hundreds of units of affordable housing to our community as Vice Chair of the Housing Authority of Portland. And I am working to restore arts education in our schools, to expand access to the arts as Vice Chair of the Oregon Cultural Trust. And for the past 3 years, I hosted a weekly public affairs show on television, shining a light on city government, asking how it can work better for all Portlanders. Or as my daughter charitably said, I have a face for radio. My work as a lawyer and as a community leader has been great training for what we need in our next city commissioner. Someone from outside City Hall with progressive values and a record of getting things done. As city commissioner, I'll support stronger sunshine laws so the public can see how their city government functions, including how it spends money and makes decisions. I'll fight and continue to fight for adequate funding for our schools. I'll be a champion for our neighborhood small businesses. And I'll work tirelessly to develop innovative solutions to our housing crunch. I look forward to answering your questions today, and when we are done, I hope you will support my campaign for a new voice in City Hall. Thank you very much.
Mr. Middaugh.
Nick, I think your daughter's wrong. I think you're quite handsome. So I would just have to take issue. I want to start by noticing that, Nick, you don't have a City of Portland pin. Are you? Why do you hate our city? No. It's the wrong debate. Thank you, City Club, for having us today. It's a true honor to be here. I've been to a lot of these debates, and I have to tell you, I never imagined myself being up here, but it's been really fun campaigning my way to today. I've been impressed by the spirit and vigor and support that the City of Portland has for our government and the interests they have in our city. I'd like to point out my two daughters, Grace and Sylvia, are here today. They were both born here in Portland, and if there's any cookies left over, I'm sure they'd be happy to help out with that. This campaign's been a big deal for me and my family because there's been many nights where I wasn't home to put them to bed or to read to my kids, or mornings where they left for school without me being there because I was off at a meeting. But you know what? It's still been worth it, and I think they would agree with me. The reason it's worth it is because my kids and your kids both deserve a Portland that's better than the Portland of today. That's why I'm running for City Council. I think our city today is so great because we agree on our values. We value things that are green, that are progressive, that are affordable, that are open to all. We value the voices of everyday Portlanders as much as we value the voices of the rich and powerful. Some would say we value the ordinary people even more. I think we're a successful city today because we've had a string of bold council members with real experience in government who turned our values into policies that actually work. It's one thing to want to be a leader on affordable housing and the environment. It's quite another to navigate multiple layers of government, many different businesses, and actually get the job done and have your colleagues agree with you and vote with you. I have a proven track record of getting that work done. I helped create a community grants program to support our schools. I partnered with businesses to cut red tape at South Waterfront. I saved $1 million bringing salmon back to Portland. I helped find new resources for the homeless, for housing. I teamed with our universities to find local solutions to climate change and global warming. And I've served on the Columbia River Gorge Commission where I've stood up against developers who wanted to despoil our beautiful national scenic area. I was co-chair of my neighborhood where I negotiated good neighbor agreements, helped get adult-oriented businesses out of our neighborhood. I volunteer in my kids' schools, even doing fundraising, and I've served our state on behalf of 2 members of Congress. My independence, my experience, my passion for Portland will allow me to deliver results beginning on day 1. But don't take my word for it. Ask any of the 1,700 people who in record time gave me their signatures and $5 to qualify me for public financing. It's great to be here. I'd be honored to have your vote. Look forward to your questions.
Thank you. We will now move to the portion of the program where I ask the questions prepared in advance by City Club members and the general public. The candidate to whom the question is directed will have 60 seconds to respond to the question. Following each answer, the opposing candidate will have the option of a 45-second rebuttal. The candidates have not seen the questions in advance. First question goes to Mr. Fish. According to the City of Portland's 2007 Resident and Business Survey, the residents of 10 east and southeast neighborhoods consistently rate their neighborhood livability and local government's overall performance lower than do the residents of the rest of the city. These 10 neighborhoods include Argay, Brentwood, Darlington, Centennial, Lentz, Powellhurst, Gilbert, Park Rose, Mill Park, Park Rose Heights, Woodland Park, Pleasant Valley, Russell, and Wilkes Glenfair. Why are these neighborhoods dissatisfied with their livability and the performance of local government? And what, if anything, should the city do in response?
Thank you. You know, the communities in East Portland, particularly east of I-205, are still part of what we call the forgotten Portland. And the truth is that until we adequately and fairly share city resources in all of our 95 neighborhood associations, we will not bring them into the fold fully. Jim and I were at a community forum the other night, and we got an earful. They don't like one-size-fits-all planning. They feel they don't get their share of infrastructure. Their schools are struggling. Their businesses are struggling. And no one seems to be listening. So here's what we can do. First, as I said, all 95 neighborhood associations of this city deserve to have their fair share of services, including our friends east of the highway. Second, we need to support our neighborhood small businesses. And third, we need commissioners who will bring City Hall to them. I've advocated that we have evening and weekend meetings so people can fully participate in our government. Thank you.
Mr. Middaugh, you have 45 seconds.
Certainly heard a lot about East Portland being ignored, and that's why, working with Commissioner Sten, we kicked off the East Portland Action Plan. We brought together a set of community leaders out there to tell the city what we needed to do, and I personally wrote the appropriations request to win dollars to help implement the actions that were derived by that community group. So not only have I heard, I've acted. We've also got more emergency rescue equipment that was recently moved out to East Portland to reduce response times, and I've helped David Douglas School District by helping champion a satellite urban renewal district to help fund a new school out there. So schools, emergency response, I've acted to help East Portland feel heard by City Hall.
Now, Mr. Middaugh, the second question. Portland appears to be close to finalizing its first satellite urban renewal area, a process that would allow tax increment dollars from one area normally tied to that area to spend in another part of the city. As Commissioner Sten's Chief of Staff, you were involved with the effort to establish a satellite urban renewal area that would funnel tax increment revenue from the River District, which includes the Pearl District, to support the David Douglas School District. How was the decision made to provide targeted support for David Douglas? And would you make similar decisions as a member of the City Council? Why or why not?
So the last question was a great lead into this. East Portland is field ignored. Urban renewal is a powerful tool to keep downtown vibrant, but we're going to lose that tool unless we share those resources equitably. That's why we reached out to David Douglas. It was important to show the people in East Portland that downtown wasn't going to ignore them any longer. How did we choose David Douglas? It was easy. David Douglas has the most crowded schools, the greatest influx of poor families who couldn't afford to live in Portland anymore, and the greatest challenge passing a bond measure there. As a city commissioner, I'll feel obligated to do everything possible to ensure that those students and those communities who aren't being served by the city get equitable treatment. And if we have to use satellite districts and urban renewal dollars to do it, I'm going to stand with them and get it done.
Mr. Fish, you have the option.
Thank you. Look, I'm passionate about education, and I believe every child deserves a chance to succeed. And my commitment to education in this race has earned me the endorsement of both Stand for Children and the Portland Association of Teachers. But when we look at the satellite district concept, I'm mindful of the fact that both the city attorney, the League of Women Voters, and a lot of other groups in our community that I respect said that they thought it was illegal, that it would not pass muster under state law. I will do everything I can as a city commissioner to bring equity citywide to our school districts. But if it turns out that this plan is illegal, my question to the current City Council is, what's your plan B? You've promised them an elementary school, and there is no plan B, and the city doesn't have the money to advance them at this point.
Mr. Fish, Mayor Potter recently released his proposal budget for the next fiscal year. Please give us your analysis of the proposed budget and explain any changes you would make.
Is Tom in the room? If he was, of course, I would say it was visionary. First of all, a few things about how we deal with the surplus, if I could. I have been surprised over the last 3 years that no one has seriously proposed taking a portion of the surplus and putting it into the city's reserves. I don't know about you, but as we're moving into the recession and as my family is beginning to tighten its belt, we're beginning to make cuts in our expenses. I think the City Council should have taken $5 million of the most recent surplus and put it into our $45 million reserves. Second, I'm pleased that the mayor has changed his course on the Arts Partners funding proposal. It's a modest $150,000 investment in getting arts back into the schools. And third, as a general matter, I appreciate the fact that the mayor is bringing some sharp focus to our basic services citywide. My time is up.
Mr. Middaugh, you have 45 seconds.
I'd say the same thing whether Tom Potter was here or not, because I speak my mind. I think that there was a real lack of ongoing funding turned over to housing programs. That was something that Commissioner Sten asked for, and it's going to really challenge us to continue to support those folks who can't afford to live in Portland. I was disappointed that the mayor chose not to fund Project Homeless Connect, which is something that helps connect our community back with our homeless people and make them feel like they're part of our great city. And I was disappointed that funds to help the Port of Portland deal creatively with the Response to Portland Superfund weren't included. It's going to end up costing us more in transaction costs to not fund this program than it would have if he would have stepped up and helped our industrial partners get moving again.
Mr. Middaugh, the next question. Portland's next mayor will reassign the city bureaus among the 5 council members. Which bureaus do you want in your portfolio and why?
It's a great question. In this case, we're going to get housing when we first start and fire and rescue, and I'm honored to have those bureaus. I'd like to add the Bureau of Environmental Services to my portfolio, and here's why. I think the city of Portland has an earned reputation for sustainability. Sustainability is going to be the future of our family wage jobs growth. And I think that BES is in a terrific position to generate family wage jobs, help partner with private industry to create new stormwater and environmental cleanup technology that will be used all around the nation and the world. I also believe that BES is in a unique position to clean up the Willamette River. It's time to get off the dime and clean it up. It's good for our city, for recreation, and more importantly, it's good for business. 1 in 8 jobs in Portland is dependent on shipping and freight out of the Portland Harbor. Cleaning up the river will lift the cloud of liability and start investment flowing again and create a lot of terrific jobs for our families.
Mr. Fish.
As Jim said, the winner of this race will step into Commissioner Sten's portfolios, but the new mayor gets to make new assignments. These are the ones I'll ask for. The Arts Commissioner, I'll ask to be the Parks Commissioner, the Housing Commissioner, and the Small Business Liaison. And the reason I'd like to be both the Parks Commissioner and the Housing Commissioner is because when you look at equity citywide, what we know is that in park-deficient areas, we also have housing-deficient areas. Nothing improves the quality of life more than marrying green spaces with affordable housing and home ownership, particularly again in East Portland. I want to be the leader on council that finally brings these 2 great bureaus together for the benefit of our people.
Mr. Fish, the next question. Our infrastructure needs for maintenance and new projects far exceed our current revenue sources. Commissioner Sam Adams has proposed new tax increases totaling approximately $500 million to help pay for deferred maintenance and new projects. Would you support such a tax increase? Why or why not?
No one likes to pay more taxes and fees, and this past year my property taxes went up 12%. And my income did not match that. And as a candidate, my income is going in the other direction. So this is a tough call, but I want to step back for a second and compliment Commissioner Adams on the process that he undertook. This is, I think, one of the most comprehensive public engagement processes that I've seen. He engaged all the stakeholders, and I watched all the testimony, albeit on television, that came before the council. I think he's done a good job identifying the problem, and I support safe, sound, and green streets. That said, The ultimate solution here is to get the federal government and the state government to step up and help us. And we know what that means. Certain fees and taxes at the federal and state level haven't been adjusted since 1993. And we have to get out of this cycle of always having to put up our own money to deal with what are essentially state and national priorities. But yes, I do support the Safe, Sound, and Green Streets initiative.
Mr. Middaugh.
I think Sam did a great job too. It's going to be interesting to evaluate the proposals that shifts from being approved by council to being approved by the voters. I will support putting it out for a vote, and I think these are investments that need to be made. As a bike commuter for 15 years, I've seen firsthand the deterioration of our infrastructure. As a child of a man who worked in transportation his whole life, I understand the value of good streets and good transportation connections. So as long as this proposal is equitable, as long as the projects are very clear and transparent, I'll be supporting it.
Mr. Middaugh, the next question. The centerpieces of many economic development strategies in cities around the country are Major League Baseball or Major League sports facilities and convention centers with hotels. Portland has only one Major League sports facility and no convention center hotel. Comment on your support or lack thereof for public funding of professional sporting facilities and convention center hotels.
I'm interested in the convention center hotel and in sports facilities, but here's the deal I would make. I sat down with the Lloyd District Executive Partnership, and they asked me about my position on the convention center hotel and expanded sports facilities, and here's what I said. They made a passionate plea and a very thoughtful argument that public investment in those facilities would generate significant private investment. They were very clear and very passionate about it, and I tend to believe them. So what I said was, let's see the development agreements that document that the private sector is ready to step up and make a commitment just like the public sector is. They said, well, it's a chicken and egg thing. And I said, I'll work with you to create a signing ceremony where when you bring the private investment to the table, I'll bring the public investment to the table, and we'll have a true partnership. I'm not comfortable having the public lead based on promises. I need to see the commitment from the private sector. When we get that, we'll build those projects and it'll benefit our city.
Mr. Fish.
With respect to Major League Baseball, I don't think that's a priority for the city right now. If the current owner of the Portland Timbers would like to get a Major League soccer team here, and if he needs some upgrades to PGE Park, I think that's something we could talk about at the city. With respect to the Convention Center Hotel, I watched both consultants give their presentations, and they were sort of at opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of both a rosy scenario and a doomsday scenario. My concern is who's going to get stuck with the liability if it doesn't pan out? Number two, if there is a downturn in the economy and the hotel goes discount, is that fair to our other hotels that don't have a public subsidy? And finally, who will pick up the tab? And we're waiting to have Metro complete its report on that.
Next question, Mr. Fish. What, if anything, do you think City Hall should do to make Portland a more welcoming place to do business?
Well, a number of things. First of all, the constant complaint that we hear out in the community is that the development process is still too cumbersome. I'll have an expediter on my staff who works with people that have direct interaction with my bureaus. And I'll also take a page out of what Commissioner Strawn pioneered when she served, which is I'll ask my other commissioners to have lead people join a group that meets regularly so that people that have projects can come in, find out what all the issues are, and we can get to solutions. Number two, we've made some progress on targeted tax relief for our small businesses by increasing the business owner's compensation deduction. I would continue to lift that to $125,000. Number three, we need a champion on council for small business. There's some people who run for office in our community that are almost embarrassed to talk about business issues. I'm not. Small businesses account for 80% of our jobs. They need a champion. And finally, we have a historic opportunity with lots of land that's coming online, from the post office to freeway lands, and we need to develop it wisely.
Mr. Middaugh.
You hear a lot of talk on the campaign trail about making permitting easier for projects. And I'm proud to say that I spent 6 years getting permits for city projects. I went through the full alphabet soup of local, state, and federal regulatory agencies, and I came up with creative ways to shave months and months off the time frame and thousands of dollars off the cost of getting those permits. I know how to streamline projects. I've done it for city projects, and I'll bring that skill to work on day one in City Hall. Thanks.
Next question, Mr. Middaugh. The Portland Police Association, which is the union representing police officers, refutes accusations that the Portland police officers engage in racial profiling. The association further claims that those who make such pronouncements have misconstrued the data collected by the police bureaus. How do you respond to the concerns about racial profiling by Portland police, and what, if anything, would you do as a city commissioner to address these concerns?
This is one of the toughest questions that's out there in our city right now. And I want to say, whatever the data shows, I have knocked on enough doors and talked to enough people of color who have told me to my face at the door that they are scared of Portland police. That is a problem regardless of what the data shows. So, a few things we need to do. The Independent Police Review report had at least 20 recommendations that were broadly supported by the police union, the council, and members of the community. We need to implement those now. We need to improve the number of police who live in Portland. Right now, many officers don't live in town, and that makes it difficult for them to get to know their neighborhoods. I'd like to find ways, working with the union, to have more officers living here in Portland. Finally, we need to fully staff our police department. We have budgeted positions that are currently not filled. That creates stress on the system. It makes it harder for the officers. We need to fill those positions, even if it means an additional training academy. This is a real issue, regardless of what the data shows.
Mr. Fish.
As a civil rights lawyer who is deeply committed to the concept of equal justice under law, I know that race continues to be the great problem in our country. It's not limited to the police bureau. It pervades all of our society. We should not target police or any other professionals in our community. We should engage as a community to address race because it is the great unfinished job. I believe that most of our sworn officers are hardworking people who try to follow the rules. There are some bad cops. For them, I have a very simple policy: zero tolerance. To succeed, we need a system that has more openness and transparency, more accountability, and we need the resources to do the job. But my goal is to restore trust, because trust is the cornerstone of effective community policing.
Next question, Mr. Fish. So far, Portland's system of publicly financed campaigns, known as voter-owned elections, has been marred by controversy. Explain why you think Portland's system of publicly funded campaigns ought to continue as is, be eliminated, or be reformed.
You know, I'm running a grassroots campaign for City Council. Before anyone else got in, I agreed to limit my contributions and spending to $150,000. And I support comprehensive campaign finance reform at all levels, including a change in federal law which would give candidates free access to television. Now, public financing, which is a concept I support, at its best allows access to candidates who typically are not heard, and it has the effect of taking big money out of politics. Portland's experiment with voter-owned elections has been well-intentioned, but clearly flawed. As a city commissioner, I will work to strengthen VOE. I've also made a commitment that we will refer it to the voters in 2010, and here's my conviction. If this system is to survive, we need to give the voters a chance to decide whether they own voter-owned elections.
Mr. Middaugh.
I think voter-owned is a terrific program. I wouldn't be here today without it. And the best part of it for me is the dozens and dozens of people who contacted me after contributing $5 to my effort and said, I've never contributed to a city race before. I've never participated in a city election at this level. Voter-owned elections is doing exactly what it was supposed to do. We're learning as we go. There's improvements that need to be made. I'm the firsthand witness of how difficult some of the rules and regulations are, but voter-owned is bringing new people into the system and building community in ways that no other program in our society right now does. It needs support.
Mr. Middaugh, next question. Both you and your opponent have strong credentials when it comes to promoting affordable housing. Do you differ on housing policy in any material ways? Please explain.
I don't think we differ very much, and I'm proud to say that both Nick and I are very passionate about the importance and value of affordable housing in our community. I think we both share a passion for ensuring that our investments are targeted directly at those who need them most, the people that even the Housing Authority of Portland won't house, the people who are at 0 to 30% of median family income, those people with mental illness, addiction, medical disabilities who have no incomes. So I think we share a passion, and I think the city's going to be better for it. I think Erik Sten's legacy on affordable housing will be well taken care of. And what I'm most proud of is that Commissioner Sten has endorsed me because he believes I'm the best person to carry on Portland's successful legacy of affordable housing delivery.
Mr. Fish?
The primary reason I'm in this race is that when Commissioner Sten announced his intent to resign, I thought we needed someone who could to step up to carry the baton on housing. You know, everyone deserves safe and decent and affordable housing. And for 20 years, I've worked on innovative solutions to our housing crunch, most recently as the Vice Chair of the Housing Authority of Portland. Here's 4 new ideas that I'll pursue. One is that I'll work with our private banks like Albina Banks to help prevent foreclosures in our community, particularly people trapped in the subprime mess. Second, we have a lot of senior housing that's about to expire, the federal subsidies. I'll develop a task force to save that housing. Third, it's time we ended discrimination against renters. It is okay, apparently, in Portland today to discriminate against people with Section 8 vouchers. And finally, I will work doggedly to find a new fee for housing, including a statewide recording fee.
Next question, Mr. Fish. Portland has a so-called streetcar mafia, bike mafia, condo mafia, and of course, the traditional downtown business lobby. How clean is city government? And give us your assessment of Portland's relatively new system of lobbyist registration and reporting.
You know, when voter-owned elections was first proposed, I had some extensive conversations with Commissioner Sten and others. And what they told me was they were pushing that reform for reasons that were unrelated to corruption and the kinds of things that normally bring public financing to cities. I'm told by the existing commissioners that we are generally free of corruption in this city. I'd like to see more openness and transparency in how we do our business. I think more sunshine will keep us on the right path. But I think as a general matter, we've set a pretty high standard in terms of clean government. On the question of lobbying registration, which I fully supported last time and believe we should continue to tighten, I think, again, it's helpful and important that the public has information about who is in City Hall and who is influencing our elected officials. I'd go one step further, though. We have a website system at City Hall that you can't navigate. It's stuck in the 19th century. I would update that, and I would bring a lot more sunshine to our deliberations.
Mr. Middaugh.
I don't think there's a lot of corruption in City Hall. What I do think is there's a set of players, the mafias that you brought up, who have had access to City Hall for a long, long time, mostly deservedly so. These are good folks who do good work, but let's face it, their voices are always heard. They should be heard, but there are a lot of voices out there who haven't been heard, and that's where voter-owned elections is terrific. I think the lobby registration is a great thing. I think people have the right to know who I talk to, who comes into City Hall, and who meets with me. My calendar will be public. My supporters and positions are listed on my website. I will be very transparent. People will know what I'm doing and who I'm talking to, and they'll know what my positions are on issues.
And now, Mr. Middaugh, one would think that Portland, being the largest city in Oregon and the economic engine of the state, would wield considerable power in state politics. But is the opposite true? Has Portland become the kiss of death in the halls of the state capitol? Comment on your understanding of Portland's role in state politics and explain what you would do to strengthen Portland's influence in Salem.
Portland's not always the kiss of death, but it's certainly viewed as the Harry Potter Dementor of Salem, I think. But let me tell you, I have firsthand experience coming from Portland and serving on the Columbia River Gorge Commission. I witnessed firsthand at every meeting the hostility that's aimed at a major metro area. And what's really frustrating is people form opinions without actually having the facts. Our issues on housing, on workforce, on jobs, on schools are very consistent with rural Oregon. And what it's going to take is more time spent down in Salem, more time spent on the road getting to know people and sharing the fact that our housing, our schools, our jobs problems are the same across the state. And if we work together, we can get things done. I've done it on the Gorge Commission. I've worked all across the 4th District of Oregon, which is in southwest part of the state, so I'm very familiar with rural issues. The Gorge Commission experience has given me firsthand knowledge of what it takes to build relationships across counties and regions of our state.
Mr. Fish.
I spent some time last year lobbying down in Salem for 2 issues. One was a change in the law that governs non-competition agreements, restrictive covenants that prevent people who are fired even wrongfully from taking a job in their chosen profession. And working with a broad coalition, we brought change, and that law was amended. And second, I work to lobby on arts and culture and heritage issues as a commissioner of the Oregon Cultural Trust. My sense is that part of the problem can be cured through FaceTime, through actually spending time with legislators in different parts of the state, and identifying with their issues. But there is some hostility, and I think it isn't just the Eastern Oregon legislators, it's actually even within the region in our surrounding counties. We have some work to do.
Thank you. Now we move on to the next portion. During this portion of the program, each candidate will ask 3 questions of the other. Questions must be asked in 30 seconds. The opposing candidate will have 1 minute to respond, after which the questioner will have an option of a 30-second rebuttal. We will alternate between the candidates and begin with Mr. Middaugh. Mr. Middaugh?
Nick, I believe that sometimes it's really important for elected leaders to take hard positions on tough issues, let voters know where they stand. In my career, throughout this campaign, I've been really clear and honest about my opinions, even when it's been controversial. I stood up to help the city buy PGE. I've been clear that I don't approve of the Columbia River crossing as it's currently proposed. I've taken a stand against the private police to enforce public laws in public spaces. We've been asked about these issues repeatedly, but I haven't heard you take strong stands on them. Do you support the city's effort to buy PGE? Do you support the current Columbia River crossing proposal?
Mr. Fish, please respond.
I'm trying to write, there's apparently 3 parts. Let's start with PGE. My understanding is that there is no current effort underway to acquire PGE. If PGE is the subject of a hostile takeover at some point in the future, with something like Texas Pacific coming into town, threatening to take over our great resource, then I will put the public interest ahead of anyone else's interest and take responsible action to protect that resource. Number 2, on the Columbia River crossing, I think it's presumptuous for either of us to take a position until the draft environmental impact statement is out and we have all the facts. Now, I would love to be able to get to a responsible replacement option, but we don't have all the facts to make that judgment, Jim. I'd like to see the EIS, I'd like to see the impact on surrounding communities, and I'd like to see a funding package that is realistic. A $4.2 billion package with the kind of money they're talking about in out years doesn't seem very realistic. And finally, I cannot support any Columbia River crossing project that does not include alternative transportation like light rail, bike, and walk.
Mr. Fish, your first question of Mr. Middaugh.
Jim, Mayor Potter has stated publicly that he wishes to lead a community conversation about race following the Cesar Chavez street naming debacle. What is your most significant accomplishment to date in advancing racial justice in our community?
I think the most significant accomplishment I had was opening my mind and my ears to the Cesar Chavez Committee when they came through City Hall. I think of all the offices, we were the most receptive and most open to their discussions. And I've also said that I'm accountable for some of the problem that happened with that debate. When those folks came in, we gave them the idea that they were on the right track because they said they were working with the community. We didn't do enough due diligence as City Hall staff to reach out to the community. So my commitment is to be open and to listen and to recognize that no matter how progressive my values are, my experience is not the same as those of people of color. So I've opened my mind, I've opened my ears, I've helped listen, I've brought people into City Hall, and I'm going to continue to do that as a commissioner.
Mr. Fish, rebuttal.
I continue to believe that there are huge divisions in our community around both race and class. I commend Mayor Potter for saying he wants to have that community conversation. I'm a board member of the Oregon League of Minority Voters. We are trying to have a community discussion and also provide mentoring opportunities. But as a lawyer, I've also represented people in civil rights claims, and I can tell you we have a huge problem in both recruiting and nurturing minority leadership in our community. And the proof of that is just read the paper on a weekly basis.
Mr. Middaugh, your next question of Mr. Fish.
Nick, we both received support and endorsements from many individuals and organizations, and I've published every single one on my webpage. I'm particularly proud that 2 organizations who are strong supporters of the environment and sustainability, the Oregon League of Conservation Voters and the Oregon Natural Resources Council Action, have given me their sole support. You've said you're for affordable housing and sustainability and transparency, but there are 2 organizations that have given you their sole support who aren't listed anywhere, the Home Builders PAC and the Realtors PAC. The home builders have complained about city efforts to improve efficiency, and the realtors have fought the creation of new sources for affordable housing. How come they're not on your webpage or in your literature?
They're not in my literature because we don't have any literature yet, but that we've actually sent to houses. Let's take the home builders and the realtors for a moment. They have endorsed in this race, as I understand it, Commissioner Adams, Commissioner Leonard, and Nick Fish. My understanding is that not one of those three candidates agrees with either organization on all their issues, and I'll give you two examples. I happen to believe that the preemption that exists as state law that does not allow us to consider a real property transfer tax is wrong. I don't agree with the preemption, and I also think that our community should be able to have a vote on that if they so choose. That's the number one legislative issue of the realtors, and I disagree with them. With respect to the homeowners, I understand that some homeowners, home builders, have qualms about the urban growth boundary. I believe the urban growth boundary should be tightened, not weakened. I believe that the fact that I got their endorsements is more a testament to the fact that they think I'll bring fresh new leadership to City Hall than that I'm working in lockstep with all of their positions.
Mr. Middaugh, your rebuttal?
So the interesting part of that, Nick, is that there's no mention anywhere on your website or anywhere else that you've received their support, despite the fact that they're among your very largest supporters in this race. I'll always be honest and upfront about who my supporters are and what my positions are on the issues.
Mr. Fish, your next question of Mr. Middaugh.
Jim, in a Mercury essay that you authored, you stated that you were opposed to providing charity to the county, which is currently experiencing a structural deficit. What did you mean by the comment, and what kinds of investments do you support with our county partners?
I support a full partnership with the county. I was proud during my work with PDC to ensure that with the new changes in the River District that the county was made whole. I don't think the county needs handouts from us. I think they need a partnership where we get over the various jurisdictional boundaries and we focus on providing the services to people who need them. The charity argument came up last year when Ted Wheeler came to City Council with some thoughtful suggestions about sharing the burden. And that turned into a big dogfight between the mayor and Randy Leonard and the county. That's not the kind of commissioner I'll be. I'll step up and partner with the county like I have on PDC funding, like I have on homelessness, like I have on the 10-year plan on affordable housing. We need to ignore the boundaries, focus on delivering the services to those who are most needy.
Mr. Fish, 30-second rebuttal.
Well, I can tell you some of our partners at the county took strong exception to the notion of charity because they understand that in the mature urban renewal districts that we're extending, they're losing 26 cents on the dollar to fund anti-poverty programs. And on the 10-year plan to end homelessness, which if I am fortunate to win this race, I would be leading on behalf of the city, the county has the responsibility to provide the social services, but they don't have the resources. So I don't view it as charity, I view it as understanding the impact of our decisions on their budget.
Mr. Middaugh, your next question of Mr. Fish.
Throughout this campaign, you've repeatedly said you want to bring a new voice to City Hall. It's a great idea and a nice campaign theme. But this is the third time you've run for City Council, and 2/3 of your campaign fund was provided by fewer than 100 people, each of whom gave you more than $500. Most of them are great folks. I've worked with many of them, Homer Williams, Bob Pamplin, Joe Weston, Tom Imeson. That said, these people and all your other 90-some-odd donors have ready access to City Hall for years. How can you claim to be a new voice when 2/3 of your campaign money is coming from people who already have access to City Hall?
Well, first of all, I want to address why I'm running. My wife looked at the numbers. She said, honey, you ran in 2002 and you came in third. You ran in 2004, you came in second. She said, just on the basis of the law of averages, you can't lose in this race. Jim, I understand why you want to divide us on the basis of who's contributing to whom. But when I talk to people in the community, they actually asked us to inspire them. And I'm not going to get into a back and forth about who's contributing to my campaign. They're the same people who are contributing to Commissioner Adams and Commissioner Leonard, to people running for statewide office. And if the implication is somehow by taking their money, any of us have degraded ourselves, I respectfully disagree. I've raised money from over 300 people in this race. I think my average contribution is about $220. And in each case, I've been very clear about my values when I went in to meet with donors. No one will own my vote on this council.
Mr. Middaugh, rebuttal.
You know, Nick, I didn't mean to degrade you. In fact, I said those folks were great people, good city officials. But the question was, you claim to be a new voice. This is your third try. You're relying on the people who already have access. My campaign is fueled by 1,700 individual Portlanders who contributed $5, many for the first time. They've never participated in City Hall campaigns before. My campaign's engaging new voices, not just claiming to be one.
Mr. Fish, your next question to Mr. Middaugh.
Jim, at my home, we have a table next to our bed where I stack books that I hope to read someday. What's the last book, which may be why I'm so popular with Michael Powell. What's the last book you read, and what did you learn from it?
You know, the book that I read was a book called Consilience. It's an interesting book, and it talks about how we can come up with a more thoughtful systems approach to making things work. And it compares government systems and natural systems. And you know what? Someday I'm going to go back to college and get a master's degree because I see a lot of parallels between how the environment works and how bureaucracies function. It was a really eye-opening book that helps me understand that we're all human here and we behave in certain reasons. And it gave me a lot of insight into how to make government work better, how to work across bureaus to look at the serious functions rather than the bureaucratic boundaries that divide us. And it was really thoughtful. And Nick, if you haven't read it, I'd be happy to loan it to you. It's a great book.
Mr. Fish.
More free time in about a month. For me, it's a book by Andy Stern called A Country That Works, and I think the subtitle says it all. Something's wrong with a country that helps the rich get richer while most Americans get the squeeze. I commend it to you. He's the president of the Service Employees International Union, which is one of 4 or 5 labor organizations in this race that have endorsed me. And as he points out, maybe the most important challenge we face at the federal level is finally getting comprehensive national health insurance. And I'm grateful that I live in a state that has Governor Kitzhaber and Senator Wyden leading the way.
Thank you. We will now move to the final portion of the program, 3-minute closing statements from each candidate. We will begin with Mr. Middaugh.
Thanks, everyone, for your time and attention today. You know, my mom taught citizenship to recent immigrants to this country. And during my childhood, I learned firsthand how lucky we are to live in such a great country and how grateful others are to move here and be able to participate in our form of government. How grateful we should be to have so much diversity among our citizens. It was a real eye-opener for me. I think it's the reason I ended up in public service. My dad got his start after World War II as a Pontiac salesman. He ended up, through hard work and loyalty, managing all the transportation-related issues for a major assembly division for General Motors. So I know from all the Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings and late nights of him on the phone, the value of hard work and the importance of transportation and jobs to our economy. I grew up in San Jose, California on the edge of a subdivision, and I watched as the vineyards, the orchards, and the dairy at the end of my street were converted to more subdivisions and strip malls. Based on that experience, I understand the importance of protecting our environment and open space and holding fast to our values as a community. I've been a bike commuter for nearly 15 years. I've lived the benefits and risks of choosing to travel without a car. I'm going to be a strong supporter for giving more people the option to choose to travel without a car. I'm running for city council for our schools. I'm running for our neighborhoods. I'm running for our clean air and our water. I'm running for the future. Happy to see my kids still in the back smiling. It's their future. More importantly, I've got the knowledge of what needs to be done from years and years of community activity right here in Portland. And I have the experience to get those things done from my years of working across all the city bureaus and my 1 year in City Hall. More importantly, I know how to get those things done with fiscal integrity. I've reduced budgets in City Hall and with my own program. I have the courage and independence, based on being voter-owned, to speak for those who don't have a voice and the most needy in our society, the very people who need a new voice the most. Just as important, I have the courage to admit what I don't know and to listen to people whose experiences are different than mine. I think that's something that's been lacking in City Hall. I'm an open book. You'll always know where I stand on the issues, and I'll always be accountable for my actions. As a clean money candidate, I've got no special interest contributors, so my only special interest will be you, the voters. I'm really proud to be here today. It's been really fun to be out knocking on doors, meeting Portlanders in neighborhoods all across this city. I'm so honored that so many people have stepped up and told me their thoughts, and I'm so impressed that Portlanders love this city. And it's very inspiring. If you haven't done it, take a few minutes to talk to your neighbors, because you're going to come away inspired. Thanks for listening today. I'm Jim Middaugh. I'd really appreciate your vote.
Now, Mr. Fish.
Thank you, City Club, for inviting us to participate in this debate, and I'm honored to share the stage today with Jim and excited about the possibility of public service. You know, a great painter once said, "I dream of painting, and then I paint my dreams." When I dream of Portland, I imagine a city where every citizen, regardless of race or income or neighborhood, enjoys the benefits of a livable city. A city where there are no D schools or A schools, just excellent schools. A city where every child has a loving, caring adult in his or her corner. A city where we end homelessness, close the minority home ownership gap, and prevent older adults from being thrown out of their home. A city that promotes good family wage jobs with benefits and school-to-work partnerships. A city where there are no East Side problems or West Side problems, just Portland solutions. To achieve our dreams, we need leadership in City Hall as good as the people it represents. Progressive leaders with a track record of bringing people together to solve tough problems. If you share my dream, if you share my belief that with every challenge we face, there is an opportunity, I ask for your support in this race. I'm honored that so many trusted organizations and individuals in our community have given me their vote of confidence. From our teachers and our city workers to progressive leaders like Governor Barbara Roberts and Gretchen Kafori. And I would be honored to have your support as well. But as we close out this program, I wish to acknowledge one person in the audience. She is the reason my family moved to Oregon. She is my biggest supporter, and she is the person who has shared my dreams throughout this journey. To my wife, Patty, a heartfelt thank you, and I love you. Thank you.
On behalf of the City Club of Portland, I'd like to thank our moderator, our timekeeper, and our panel for being here today. The candidates, Jim Middaugh and Nick Fish, for a very interesting and lively debate, for being willing to serve us, and for truly being among the riches of our city. Thank you, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.